I was reading today's gospel, I could not help but think about the emotions that Mary and the other women went through. They had left behind their settled lives in Galilee, and together with 12 men and their families, spent 3 years on the road, staying with friends when they could, lodging in bed and breakfast when they were able to afford it, but often enough camping under the stars. They gave up their old lives, and especially the single and widowed women in their midst. Many may have scandalized every busybody in every village they passed through. And then they get to Jerusalem, filled with hope that this is the moment that Jesus will reveal himself as the true King of the Jews, the Messiah, a warrior sent from God to lead his people out of Roman subjugation to new freedom. But then he is arrested, and as they watch, tortured, crucified, and then laid in a tomb, these women, who had given up so much to be present with Jesus and the apostles throughout his ministry, are deprived the ability to give him a proper burial because the Sabbath was coming. So they set off for the tomb as soon as they could on Sunday, in those early morning hours when the sun has not quite come up on the horizon, but the birds are beginning to chirp and the sky turns that gorgeous, deep, dark blue. And they found the tomb empty. And they were distraught. Yes, Jesus had been buried in haste, but that stone they put in front of the tomb was huge. Who would have rolled it away just to get to a body? Jesus was not even properly bathed and wrapped before being placed in the tomb. They had just put enough perfume on his body so the smell would be tolerable in a couple days, and restored his dignity with burial wrappings. It was just a body in that tomb. There was no jewelry, no gold, no silver. Had the Romans changed their mind to decide that now that the Sabbath was over, they were going to hang his body up to rot as an example for others? Had someone come to steal body parts for magical rituals or as souvenirs? Could they have just kept vigil at the tomb over the Sabbath to protect their dear friend and teacher's body? They must have been feeling such pain, fear, anger, and guilt. And then it is revealed that Christ is risen. Jesus' body is gone not because someone stole it, but because he was no longer dead. He was alive. As much as these women would have been filled with joy, cannot help but think back 21 years to the last time in scriptures when Jesus went missing. Mary and Joseph had gone down to Jerusalem for Passover and were headed back to Nazareth with most of the village, and assumed that their 12-year-old was hanging out with his buddies or something when they left, and that they would find them at bedtime. And then they discovered no one had seen him. Like any parent, they must have been terrified. Had he been kidnapped? Did Jesus think they had forgotten him? Where was he? So they headed out at first light, stopping at all the respite sites they had stopped on their way, asking if anyone had seen their baby boy. And then they found him in the temple, asking the priests and scribes questions and debating with them. And when these exhausted parents find him, they have this mix of joy and fury. They are so happy to see him alive and safe. But he and his matter-of-fact response as of what he has been up to and his ignorance of his parents' worry is exasperating. And so is his response to Mary Magdalene all these years later. Through Jesus, God became human and experienced all the trials and tribulations that come with being human, including the pain of a broken body and a torturous death. But somehow, the need to be clear in what you are up to with those closest to you never really sunk in with Jesus. Jesus had in his mind spoken plainly of the resurrection, but when it came to the moment of his death, even he, in his humanity, seemed to be unsure that it would happen. But his followers had only heard metaphor, that they would be the resurrection, that upon his death, it was their job to continue his preaching. When he died, they were not ready. Now they discover that Jesus was speaking literally. And they were filled with euphoria and elation, but also, I think, a bit of exasperation. Couldn't Jesus have been a bit clearer? Couldn't he have saved them these emotions? Couldn't he have kept them from this worry, this horror, these unwanted thoughts? But that's not who God is. God does not keep us from the worries of this world. But God promises that they will be with us through these worries and help us to find a new hope out of our greatest darknesses. God does not take the Good Fridays out of our lives, but rather promises an Easter in the end. God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present, and all-loving. But also, God is exasperating to our limited humanity. We want to know how our story turns out. We want to flip to the end. The story of Jesus, the story of Easter, is a story of keeping the faith, keeping hope alive even when all seems lost, of trusting in God to lead us through to a future far beyond our imagining. Jesus Christ is risen. Through God, the impossible is possible. Hallelujah.